everybody, and welcome to part 4 of our journey through the Egyptian gods. It is somewhat difficult to get one's head around the nature of the Egyptian gods. This is because that the Egyptian Empire lasted for such a long period and was invaded many times and was placed under many different cultural and political influences, and the priests over the period of time that Egypt was great both gained and lost power at different periods. Monotheism is a theme of many religions, and people say that there should be just but one God, and this is an ongoing battle, but the role of a god seems to be segmented into different parts. Now, to understand this concept, we must jump forward a little to the Pharaoh Akhnaten, who had a pretty good look at things and seemed to recognize that the sun was responsible for practically everything. So he began what we believe was the first attempt at monotheism through worship of the Aten. And this went on for the period of his life, and then upon his death, and his son Tutankhamun becoming pharaoh, they reverted back to the old ways, but we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. So in the previous video I made mention of the Eye of Ra, and the myths vary from region to region, but it seems that Ra would use a piece of himself in a monotheistic way to go out and do a particular job and then return, and that piece would take on a life of its own. He once lost his children and set his eye out to search for his children, and it is said that when the eye returned, he found another eye in its place and become jealous, and so he had to accommodate the needs of the eye. But moving on to the Egyptian gods, without question the Eye of Ra is an exclusive club with but 7 members, and those 7 members are a great number of the pantheon of Egyptian gods, starting out with Hathor, who is the god of merriment, who is interchangeable with the other 7 and married to Horus. Sekhmet, who is seen as the pharaoh's protector and the goddess of war, married to Hathor. Likewise, her sister, or another incarnation of herself, Bastet, who was covered in the previous video, is also married to Hathor. And the serpent goddess Wadjet does not appear to have a husband at all. And Mut is said to be the wife of Amun, who is the supreme deity and again is also interchangeable with Ra. And even Tufnut is seen to also be a member of the Eye of Ra, who is married to the god Shu. Also Nekhbet, who appears to be the second wife of Horus. The problem with Ra being pharaoh is who does battle with Apophis every evening? Is this something that come into existence at some point? And the fact that Ra aged means that the gods were never immortal or never painted that way. However, in the story of Ra's battle with Apophis and returning to the underworld every night for a renewal is sort of a way of achieving immortality. But we need to look at them individually to get some sort of understanding of them. So, moving on to Sekhmet, it is said that Ra was the pharaoh on earth, and he became old and frail, and his people disrespected him. And he got advice from his father, Nun, and Nun started in typical biblical speak by saying, he who was born of me, who became more powerful than me, and suggested that he should seek some vengeance against the human race. So he sent his eye out, and his eye turned into the goddess Sekhmet, and she was very efficient and got out of control. And there are a number of different stories, but Ra began to realize that the human race was going to be completely annihilated. He asked his daughter to stop, but she refused. And he seemed to have had some fear of her, so he cooked up a plan, and there are two stories of this. One story is that in one evening they made 7,000 jugs of beer, they dyed them red, they laid them out for her to see, and when she saw them she thought they were blood, and she started drinking the blood, and when she became drunk she forgot all about a quest to destroy mankind. And another version of the story is that the Nile was turned red with ochre and filled with wine. Now this story is very familiar to the Christian story of God turning the river Nile red. Maybe in fact it is the origin of the story, and very possibly is, as the Egyptian religions do predate Judaism and the other religions which followed along later. Moving from Sekhmet, which translates she who has power, to a much more pleasant subject, that of the goddess Hathor. It seems the history of humanity and the history of the gods are a mirror of each other when there is a constant struggle for power, life and death, war. And this says something truly horrible about us. But in the case of Hathor, she originally started off as the goddess of the Milky Way and was featured as some sort of a cow. And it was even said that the celestial cow provided the milk for the Milky Way. So the origin of the term Milky Way is actually Egyptian, if anybody ever wondered about it. But moving on to Hathor, some stories say that she was the first Sekhmet, and after Sekhmet got drunk, she turned into Hathor. That is of course inconsistent, like every damn thing else there. But she is the goddess of alcohol, and indeed there are more Egyptian festivals to her than to any other. Also being the goddess of female fertility and not so much sexuality, but beauty, I would say, judging from what I've read. And in my previous video, I did go into quite some detail about Hathor's temple in Dendera, the Dendera light, and so on and so forth, which might have worked out to be a brewery. She is truly a fascinating figure, and like all other Egyptian gods and goddesses, a somewhat confusing one. There's also quite a deal of commonality between Hathor and Isis, with Hathor being the goddess of Lower Egypt and Isis being the goddess of Upper Egypt. And Hathor too was very widely worshipped throughout Nubia and Ethiopia and even into regions of Europe over the period of which she was prayed to. And she has a large number of temples spread across Egypt, with another fascinating thing being that more babies were named after Hathor than any other god in Egypt. Not be concerned, I haven't overlooked Hathor's role in the entry of the underworld weighing of the heart ceremony. Once all the characters are established, I will recreate this. Moving on from Hathor, the goddess of alcohol, the critics about now are probably saying you haven't spent enough time on that subject, but trust me, in the past I probably spent a bit too long with Hathor, to the goddess Wadjet. Earlier in the video I mentioned that at some point in history that Ra had lost his children and he set his eye out to search for them. So the eye went out, as I said previously, and found the children, and then returned and was horrified to find another eye in its place. So Ra thought that the eye deserved a place of honour, and he adorned his head with the eye, which later became known as Wadjet. And that is why you find Ra with a snake perched upon his head. Likewise, pharaohs too. The goddess Wadjet is a protector of pharaohs, and very possibly even the beginning of the dragon myth, for she is a reptile who can fly and is supposedly capable of spitting out fire, just like a dragon. Wadjet too was introduced into Greek culture, possibly on two levels. Firstly, there is links between her and Medusa, and even today her symbol lives on in terms of the Caduceus, a symbol widely adopted by doctors throughout the world, particularly in the United States. Despite her widespread nature across Egypt, there's really little more to say about her, but she had a sister, and we'll start talking about her sister next. The very first time I became acquainted with Wadjet's sister Nekhbet was in fact in the Valley of the Kings, and I in fact wondered if she was some sort of decoration for door frames, as almost in every temple I went to in Egypt you would find her figure above a doorframe. However, this is not the case. She is in the form of a vulture, as her sister is in the form of a snake, and she was seen as the protector of the pharaoh. So the pharaoh could be protected from threats upon the ground, which a snake could protect him or her from that, and the pharaoh could also be protected from threats from the air. Don't know that a vulture would stop someone throwing stones, but that's the sort of thing that they had in mind. Additionally, she was a goddess of Upper Egypt, and there is a serious division between Upper and Lower Egypt. That's something you're going to hear about again and again, because it's critical to Egypt's history, and indeed it even applies today. When you come across a pharaoh who had united Upper and Lower Egypt, upon his or her crown you would find both Nekhbet and Wadjet adorning it. But pharaohs of Lower and Upper Egypt had the respected goddesses on their crowns. There's not really much more to Nekhbet other than that. She was the second wife to Horus, and that's pretty much it. The goddess Ma'at's existence was like no other. She was not born of the waters of Nam, nor was she born of earthly elements. She was willed into existence by Ra. Ra looked around and could see nothing but chaos, and seeing that the universe required order. And Ma'at was born from the feather of justice to become the goddess of truth, justice, and order. It is generally agreed that Sumerian society is slightly older than Egyptian society, and in their belief system they had 10 commandments which almost precisely matched those of Judaism and Christianity. My knowledge of the 10 commandments first come from the movie The 10 Commandments and Charlton Heston descending down from Mount Sinai. Not from Sunday school. After all, what child wants to go to school of the weekend? And just as a point of interest, Mount Sinai happens to be in Egypt, and the 10 Commandments are as follows. You shall not have no other God before me. You shall make no idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. You should keep the Sabbath a holy day. Honour your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbour. You shall not covet thy neighbour's goods. That means desiring what someone else has. And interestingly enough, Moses was supposed to have roamed around Egypt and got his 10 commandments from God from Mount Sinai, which is in Egypt. The Egyptian standard is somewhat different. Ma'at invented 42 laws, and the pharaoh's job was to enforce the laws. In fact, probably should have been mentioned earlier, the pharaoh was put forward as a sort of god himself. Many leaders invoke this, like the King of England is the leader of the Anglican Church and is said to get his authority from God. So it just sort of puts a little bit of a stamp on authority. Over my research, I was aware of the 10 Commandments, so I went to look to Islam for the purpose of a balanced account. Now, I did find some material, but I'm not going to use it because I couldn't get anyone to confirm it. I spoke to a friend and he asked me to speak to an imam, and I approached an imam and I got the usual line about Arabic and this and that, and why do you want to compare things? So I chose not to use it, and as you can probably tell, I'm using a great deal of AI for editing, and I found an interesting double standard. When I tried to make Muhammad speak, the AI said that that was too dangerous. Now, this is a nasty bias to be had when we live in a world where all are supposed to be equal. So, 42 laws. Now, if this bores you, please zoom ahead, but some viewers are probably interested in precisely what those 42 laws are and where they're used. Unquestionably, dying in Egypt was a very complicated business. When one reached the end of one's life, it was quite a process. The part of that process that we're dealing with now is the Hall of Judgment. So sometime after somebody's passing, Anubis would escort the deceased to the Hall of Judgment, and they would have to face 42 judges, with each of the laws said that I have not. Now, I'm not sure how much flexibility there was with this, whether you could say, yes, I have, but I didn't do too bad, or what. But if you looked at the interpretation very strictly, clearly no one's going to heaven. It's just not going to happen. And then too, one of the Pharaoh's soldiers, like one of the laws is not to have committed murder. There was many military campaigns. What did the Pharaoh give his own soldiers? A special dispensation for committing murder? I don't know the answer to this question, but the mind does raise such matters. The concept of having led a good life is one, and being rewarded with heaven is a concept not foreign to us today. Likewise, the scales of justice and various other Egyptian practices are directly in line with what we would expect. The Hall of Judgment is not talked about in Christianity. And another thing too that comes to mind, if one of the priests or the pharaohs thought that law should be a bit flexible, either applied or not applied or modified, then the gods of Egypt would have happily accommodated them. Just as today there's flexibility in religious canon, and there is flexibility within the law as time, fashion, and expectations change.
1. I have not done iniquity. 2. I have not robbed with violence. 3. I have not stolen. 4. I have done no murder. I have done no harm. 5. I have not defrauded offerings. 6. I have not made diminished or stolen oblations offerings to gods. 7. I have not plundered the gods. 8. I have not spoken on lies. 9. I have not snatched away food. 10. I have not caused pain uttered curses in later translations. 11. I have not committed fornication or adultery. 12. I have not caused the shedding of tears. 13. I have not dealt deceitfully. 14. I have not transgressed. 15. I have not acted guilefully. 16. I have not laid waste the plowed land. 17. I have not been an eavesdropper. 18. I have not set my lips in motion lied against any man. 19. I have not been angry and wrathful except for a just cause. 20. I have not defiled the wife of any man. 21. I have not defiled the husband of any wife. 22. I have not polluted myself. 23. I have not caused terror. 24. I have not transgressed disobeyed the law. 25. I have not burned with rage. 26. I have not stopped my ears against the words of right and truth. 27. I have not worked grief. 28. I have not acted with insolence. 29. I have not stirred up strife. 30. I have not judged hastily. 31. I have not been an eavesdropper. 32. I have not multiplied words exceedingly. 33. I have done neither harm nor ill. 34. I have never cursed the king. 35. I have never fouled the water. 36. I have not spoken scornfully. 37. I have never cursed God. 38. I have not stolen. 39. I have not defrauded the offerings of the gods. 40. I have not plundered the offerings of the blessed dead. 41. I have not filched the food of an infant, neither have I sinned against the God of my native town. 42. I have not slaughtered with evil intent the cattle of the gods.
Well, my friends, Atum seems to think that I've been talking for long enough. Hope that you've enjoyed that. We should be able to put a wrap onto the weighing of the heart ceremony in the next video. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, there's plenty more to come.